I'm Irfan, the PR. Welcome to our virtual sewing 101 workshop.
Today we'll be teaching you how to sew a straight seam, a rolled hem, and a curved seam. Let's get started.
Yeah.
Hannah here. You will be needing eye protection, thread, a color of your choice, pins, your scrap fabric / your fashion fabric, and small scissors.
Alright, so before you even touch the machine, and once you thread it and set it up, you have to make sure you have protective eyewear on. If you wear glasses, that is protective enough while you're sewing. Just so a broken needle or a pin doesn't come flying at your eyes or your face. You want to prevent as many injuries as possible. And so protective eyewear could be like goggles simply. So if you don't wear glasses, you can just wear goggles like these, and it'll protect your eye and help you be able to manage without any injuries to your face, because broken needles and broken pins are a common issue that can happen while sewing. So you just want to be careful. So we already set up our machine, so I'm going to go ahead and get this process started. But you guys can also set up your specific machines. We have the industrial machine here, which we had set up. So you have your fabric here, and what you're going to do is take the two right sides of the fabric and put them together for your specific design. And what we're going to do is pin these together so that they stay down while we sew over them. So it's just very simple. You just take a pin, put it through there, and make sure that it gets both sides, and make sure that you're not leaving certain edges out. And I usually space them out within a finger width, and that keeps it down. If you're a pro at this, you definitely don't need to pin certain things down, especially for a straight seam. If both fabrics are lying flat, but you just want to make sure that they are lined up. And sometimes I leave two spaces. It really just depends. The whole goal of the pins are to keep the fabric down while you're sewing. So, right. And then one last pin. As you can see, we have that pinned. So this is going to be a guideline for me when I sew. Always make sure to practice on a scrap fabric, because no matter how much of a pro you are, we are all prone to making mistakes while sewing, and you want to test out a test scrap of that specific fabric just to make sure that you have the right thread for it, that the needle goes through well, and that your tension and the stitch length for that and your machine is set up properly, so that when you actually go in for the actual product, you can avoid making big mistakes that can end up causing issues with your fabric. So just test out the scrap fabric. So I'm going to do it on a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then I do a backstitch with the level here. Depending on your machine, backstitches are different, so you'll have to follow your guide. If you have an electronic one, you can select backstitching on it. But there's oftentimes handles like this that can help you with backstitch. What a backstitch does is reinforce the stitch so that the thread doesn't go after you're done stitching. So it closes the stitching on both ends. So I'm going to continue. Slowly or quick, depending on how much control you have. And then I go back in with the back stitch. And voila. There you go. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the presser foot up, put this down, and I will teach you guys how to do a straight seam. So I'm going to go ahead and teach you guys how to do the straight seam. I already showed you on this scrap fabric how to sew. And this is a straight seam, but I will show you guys how to do it on this. So I'm gonna put the presser foot up, then put it down, and then I'm going to make sure that it's lined up at that seam allowance that I want. And I'm going to sew straight along that seam allowance. That's what a straight seam is, essentially. So I start sewing very slowly, then backstitch, and then move forward. Now notice how this pin has like a ball on it. You don't want this to get stuck underneath the needle. So you're gonna pull that out because the presser foot is holding it down, and you're gonna keep sewing. And each time you get near a needle, you'll do the same. You'll pull it out and keep sewing along that straight seam allowance. And then you just keep doing that. This part will be fast forwarded. Alright, so what you're going to do is cut off any excess strands with a small tiny scissor so that you don't get rid of the seams. And that way you have clean seams, no extra thread lingering around. And typically you're going to have the same color bobbin, which are these things that go under, as the thread that you have. But just for demonstration purposes, we have two different colored threads to show you. So the top thread is orange. This is the top part, the front part, which will show up on the right sides. And then this is essentially what's in the back. So this is the bobbin color. So hopefully that can help you and you just learn how to do a straight seam. And this, what you're gonna do is obviously iron these down and fold these down, obviously like this. But what this is what it looks like on the outside. So a straight seam is just a regular seam, but straight.
Hannah here again to walk you through the curved seam that Lauren is stitching. The key to sewing curved seams is pinning and taking your time while sewing. Before you start sewing, be sure to add as many pins as you need to feel comfortable. You want to make sure the curved edges are lined up and secure so you don't stitch it together then realize it wasn't lined up. While stitching, I recommend going slow around the curves. Use the hand crank on the sewing machine if you need to. This keeps you in control and keeps your seam allowances and finished product looking professional. Now don't forget to backstitch.
So when you're done, to remove the fabric, make sure that your needle is all the way up, because if it is down and you're trying to pull it, it's going to be hard. But if you put it all the way up and try to pull it, it'll be that easy.
Hey guys, so today we're doing a simple rolled hem. Rolled hems are a great way to finish clothing, like if you're having a skirt or something on a shirt. They're a really good way to have a nice smooth finish and cover any rough edges. So the way you start with the rolled hem is you press the bottom side of your fabric up about 1/2 inch. I already have this one pressed. And then you take this and you fold it up like this. That way you cover any rough edges inside the roll. And then you just take your iron and very carefully iron along the roll. It doesn't need to be super tight, just enough so that you can hold it in place while you pin. And then once once that's ironed, I like to flip it over and pin from this side because you're going to be sewing on this side, so it's easier to take your pins out that way. You don't need too many pins, however many you feel comfortable with, but just enough to hold the fabric in place. Alright, now we can sew this together. Where is your roll? An important trick in sewing is when you stop, always make sure you start with the needle back down in the fabric, because if you try to sew with the needle still up, when it goes back in, it can snag and create a whole mess.
Thank you guys so much for joining our sewing workshop. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Bye!
Bye!
Hey!
Oh, together? That doesn't work. What's your next line?
Oh, I have the next line. We're gonna cut that. Okay, never mind.